It's Darryn Peterson versus AJ Debansa. It's a top 15 matchup in Allen Fieldhouse. You got to be excited for this one.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, Derek Johnson? Thanks for making Locked On your number one podcast network, and thank you for joining us here on the show, Locked On Jayhawks. We're going to be breaking down, previewing Kansas BYU, Darryn Peterson versus AJ Debansa, top 15 matchup, big one in the Big 12. We'll get to the importance of the game, the storylines. We'll get to the BYU scouting report, players to watch, Kansas keys to the win, all that and more on today's episode of the show, which is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if it wins. So Kansas takes on BYU, a little Saturday afternoon action inside Allen Fieldhouse, and this is a super exciting game that people are very excited for, from the national audience of seeing Darryn Peterson versus AJ Debansa to BYU and Kansas fans who, BYU's 2-0 against Kansas since joining the Big 12. This is a big opportunity for a resume booster for both of these teams, right? And I think, it's interesting because both teams could use this win from a standpoint of like Kansas trying to hold serve at home. They already have the two Big 12 losses. BYU just lost earlier this week. Both of these teams kind of on the outside of the looking in terms of the Arizona Big 12 title chase right now with the two losses. But a loss here doesn't change that either of these teams can make a Final Four run, but it does maybe put to bed your Big 12 title hopes, so to speak, even though both are, with the way Arizona's playing, that's an uphill climb. But I think Darryn Peterson versus AJ Debansa is the big thing that everybody wants to talk about, right? It's the battle for the number one pick. It's the battle for who's going to have the bigger game, try to lead their team to victory. We saw this twice in high school, in which Peterson won both matchups. He had over 30 and a near triple-double in his first meeting with Debansa. And then the second one was the one that everybody remembers. Debansa had like 49 points. He had a near triple-double. Peterson had 58 points and hit the game-winning three to take his team out on top. And so it's going to be interesting, like, how much do they guard each other? How well do each player play with Darryn Peterson? Like, that's one of the storylines coming into this too, is his health. He missed the last game against Kansas State with the ankle injury. He's had other games he's missed this season due to hamstring or cramping injuries. So, like, are we going to get a fully healthy Darryn Peterson? Are we going to get a Darryn Peterson that can make it through the game? And how impact his matchup with AJ Debansa? And can this be the most focused version of him that we see, and that we see it go to another level? Because we've already seen a lot of special things from Darryn Peterson. Does this take it to another level? And then, for AJ Debansa, he's going to be very motivated to try to prove the people right who are, have him number one in their mock drafts, and try to prove the people who have him second or third that, hey, I should be the number one guy. And then beyond that, you have the aspect of who can impact winning. Like, you want each player to play motivated and to do their thing and put on a show. But if you're a BYU fan, if you're a Kansas fan, you don't want that to come at the cost of your team. So, like, there's that fine line between, I don't know, like, a 40-point game could be made differently. Did you score 40 points because you were efficient and they couldn't stop you? Or did you score 40 points because you took 40 shots, right? And not saying that's going to happen in this game, but it's going to be really fun to see those two guys. I'm really excited for that matchup here, right? Now, one thing that's going to be interesting, is it going to help Kansas at all that they had a clean week coming into this game? Because it's not like BYU played on Tuesday or Wednesday, where it's shortening the week a little more for them. They did play this week while Kansas didn't, but it was on Monday. So realistically, it's only a couple extra days of prep, but a couple extra days of prep for Kansas while BYU was having to, lick their wounds from a tough physical Arizona team and an Arizona game. Maybe it does. Maybe that extra day or two that you do have to prep for BYU could be the difference, because as we know, Bill Self's record in those first games of the weekend for the NCAA tournament have been pretty special, right? He has only lost in the first round at Kansas 3 times. And, he's continually won in the Sweet 16 in the first game of the Final Four. It's been those second round games or the Elite Eight games that have given Kansas more trouble. When Bill Self has all the time to prepare, he's been pretty special. So how does that help Kansas potentially in this game, right? And then you look at BYU trying to bounce back, right? They'll be extra motivated. Not that they weren't going to be playing in Allen Fieldhouse, but now they have that little extra edge. They had a crazy comeback to nearly upend Arizona, but losing on their home court, like they don't want to have a 2-loss week, right? And then you have the aspect of like, okay, BYU has beaten Kansas both times since they've joined the Big 12. One of them in Allen Fieldhouse a couple of years ago. Last year, they just got boat raced in Provo. And the question is, like, is BYU just stylistically a bad matchup for what Bill Self wants to do? Now, this Bill Self team, the personnel and how they play is very different than the team they had the last couple of years. And I think they are built a little bit better to contest with a team like how BYU wants to play. But that'll be a kind of a big conversation here. I think if BYU wins the game, it's going to feel like BYU is Kansas's kryptonite, right? But you look at this one, this is a start of a brutal stretch for KU, right? With games upcoming like at Texas Tech, and you still have to play Arizona twice. You still have to play Houston. You still have to play at Iowa State. Like this because this game is the final day of January. But essentially, if we lump it into the February games, it is a brutal last month, basically, of the regular season for KU. And so you really need to take care of your home court to be able to almost afford you some losses in some of those difficult games upcoming. And this game does become important with each team only playing each other once. Again, I don't know why Brett Yormark didn't want Darryn Peterson and AJ Debansa twice. That's crazy to me. But when you look at the potential of both of these teams, the AP poll, they're separated by one spot. And Ken Pom, they're separated by one spot. And so there is a good chance. Obviously, we have to see how things shake out over the last month of the season. But, like, there was a chance this game is for a seed line. Like, a chance that at the end of the day, the difference of getting a 3 seed versus a 4 seed or 4 seed versus a 5 seed could come down to who has the head-to-head in this game. So then that adds another little layer of importance, right? Beyond all of that, like, KU is going to have some big visitors in attendance. It sounds like Paul Pierce is going to be at the game, so that's cool. But the recruiting aspect, so Taylen Kinney, who's the number 1 point guard in the class, he is going to be visiting for this game. Now, he's already committed to KU, so it's not like, oh, you need to like woo him in. He's already committed. He's bought in at this point in time. But Tyran Stokes supposedly could be in attendance. It doesn't sound like there's been something official, at least as a time of recording, that it's been like this is guaranteed to happen, but it feels like everybody's assuming it's going to happen. So that just adds another level to this. Can Kansas have this raucous environment and pull off something? Would be, for Tyran Stokes, who's the number 1 recruit in the class of 2026, like he's sitting there going, hey, I'm watching Darryn Peterson versus AJ Debansa, the battle for the number 1 pick. I want to be the number 1 pick the following year. How important is it for Kansas to put on a show and win a game with him in attendance for that? So opportunity for this to be a really exciting weekend for KU if they can take care of business. But it's not going to be easy. BYU's got a really good team. Let's get into their scouting report next. This is Locked On Jayhawks. This episode of the show is brought to you by FanDuel. It is last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff, the final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite, riding with the underdog, or building one last same-game parlay, this is the game everyone's been waiting for. This is where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's the perfect time to cap off the season, make the Super Bowl even more exciting down to the final whistle. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season is over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. Thanks again for joining us here. Don't forget, you can check out the Everydayer Club, where you can get the ad-free version of Locked On Jayhawks anywhere you get your major podcast app. And then you get an invite to the Locked On Discord server, which we're continuing to add stuff to every day. We got like breaking news, like bots that are sending in information on the college basketball tab. We've got a Locked On Jayhawks chat and plenty of other stuff going on the Discord server. But you can join all this and get the ad-free version of the show, lockedonpodcast.com/everydayer. Our BYU scouting report here. They're 17-3 on the season, currently tied with Kansas at 5-2 in Big 12 play so far. top 40 wins over Villanova, Wisconsin, Miami, and Clemson. So good handful there. All of those, though, are ranked, and I think Wisconsin's technically like 41 on KenPom, but all of those are between like the 25 to 40 mark. They don't have any top 20 wins so far. No, they're a really good team, but I say that to say that this represents an opportunity for them to this point in time, get what would be their biggest win of the season. It would be a top 20 opponent, and it would be on the road in a very difficult place to play. Now, the 3 losses to very good teams. They had a 2-point loss in was technically a neutral site, but was really a road environment against UConn, a 13-point loss at Texas Tech and Lubbock, and then that 3-point home loss to Arizona earlier this week. But they're number 13 in the AP poll, number 15 on KenPom, number 23 on Torvik. So Torvik a little bit lower on them. Both KenPom and Torvik has them as a top 20 offense. KenPom has them a top 15 offense. The defense on KenPom 26th, the Torvik 37th. So there's where a little bit of that gap is. We're going to do 3 strengths, 3 weaknesses instead of 4, because I also have 2 things that I can't really tell. So that in a moment. But here's the strengths for BYU, the 3 biggest for me. Rebounding is one of them. You think of BYU as being this pace and space team that has a bunch of 3-point shooters. This team crashes the glass and they get extra possessions. 88th percentile nationally in offensive rebound rate. And during Big 12 only play, they are the number 1 team in Big 12 play in offensive rebound rate. So that's a real danger coming into this game. And that helps them be in the 97th percentile nationally for second chance points per game. So you just think about it, and like the offensive rebounding for a team that can shoot the 3 ball well and has a player like AJ Debansa makes them very deadly there. They're also a good defensive rebounding team, 78th percentile defensive rebound rate, but it's really the offensive rebounding that I think scares me even more. Offensive efficiency, just in general for BYU is a strength. They have a 91st percentile 2-point percentage. They have a 76th percentile 3-point percentage. They get to the foul line and they make them. They're above the 70th percentile in both. They shoot higher percentage shots, like their biggest shot zones of where they're getting their shots are at the rim and from 3. So they're taking a strong analytical approach. And then they're in the 90th percentile in effective field goal percentage, the 91st percentile in true shooting percentage. Just a very efficient offensive team. Fast break scoring is part of that. That's another strength for them. They play fast. They're in the 83rd percentile in pace, but they're in the 91st percentile in fast break points per game. And in fact, Flory Bidunga at the press conference leading up to this game mentioned that as a key for the KU defense, that they have to be able to play transition defense to slow down BYU. 3 weaknesses for BYU. I think sometimes they can get sucked into a little too much iso ball at times. And I think the proof in the pudding here would be they're just in the 31st percentile in assist rate. And if you just look at their games against quad 1 and 2 opponents, they're down to the 18th percentile in assist rate. So I think sometimes, Rob Wright can get a little, ball happy, I guess. At times AJ Debansa can, although I say that with AJ Debansa, and it's like, you're going to be a top 2 pick in the NBA draft. So like the ball should be in your hands. You know what I mean? But that is a little different than some of the past teams, which move the ball so well. Just a little bit different on this year's team. I would say another weakness here is at the rim against bigger teams. So on the season, they're actually shooting well at the rim. But if you just look at the quad 1 and 2 games, which tends to be against the better opponents and the bigger opponents, in games BYU is in the 51st percentile at the rim. Now that's still nationally average, so it's not really a true weakness. But when you compare it to many of the other things that they do well, it does wind up on the lower end of things. And then again, this is one of those same ones. So far in Big 12 only games, their D rating ranks 7th in the Big 12. So again, that's more kind of just average for a team that's very good, which ends up being one of their weaknesses. Now, the 2 things I can't really tell. Turnovers is one of them. So on the season, BYU has a really good turnover rate. They're in 86th percentile for turnover rate on offense. That's very good. They're in the 88th percentile in steal rate on defense. So they haven't turned the ball over, and they're creating extra possessions, getting steals. So why can't I tell if they're good at the turnover battle? Well, if we just look at Big 12 play, though, they're only 10th in the league in turnover rate offensively, so on the bottom half. They're 14th in the league in turnovers per game, so near the bottom. And then defensively, they have the 8th best steal rates, right in the middle of the pack, with the 11th, bottom half, best turnover rate defense. So on the season, good at forcing turnovers and preventing them. in Big 12 play, bad at doing both. So I don't know what to think there, right? Is one a reversion to the other? Is it schedule based? Is one, I don't know. Tough to tell, but that'll be interesting kind of coming into this game. The other one is 3-point shooting. So for the full year, 35.6% from three, that's 76th percentile nationally for BYU. And they do have players that like I look at and go, like Richie Saunders, one of the best 3-point shooters in the country. But in Big 12 only games, they're 13th in the league, 33.3% from three. And so that one actually kind of scares me a little bit because I'm like, is that a negative reversion and they're going to have a positive reversion to the mean coming, and could it come in this game in Allen Fieldhouse? That would be a little bit scary, right? Now, players to watch for both teams. Let's start with Kansas. We'll start with Darryn Peterson, 21.6 points per game, 4.6 rebounds, 1.7 stocks per game. He is shooting 49 from the field, 42 from three, and 82 at the foul line. Again, how is the recent ankle injury going to affect him? Because if we get a non-fully healthy Darryn Peterson, again, it took him scoring 58 points and hitting a game-winning three to beat AJ Debansa. That's how tough it was to beat Debansa for Peterson in high school. It took him having that legendary of a performance. So if the ankle injury prevents him from having a legendary performance and makes him just have a good performance, what does that mean for the rest of the players and how this kind of shakes out? But obviously everybody wants to see Peterson versus Debansa, so yeah. Peterson is the first answer here. Flory Bidunga is my other answer for players to watch. 14.4 points, 9 rebounds per game, 2.7 blocks per game, but he's ramped those up in Big 12 play. He's at 77% from the field in Big 12 play. He's averaging about 3.5 blocks per game in Big 12 play. And it's interesting because, is BYU going to guard him with Kiba Keita, who is a really good defender and athlete at the center position and can kind of match what Flory does in that regard. But the thing is, Flory has struggled more this year when he's just faced like traditional size, like guys who are like 7 foot and burly, or like like you think of the Tennessee front line, bunch of like, I don't know, mobsters down low that are like 7 foot 260 and they're just going to push you around. That seems to be where he struggled more. So this will be interesting because Keita is a really good athlete and defender and rebounder, how that kind of works out. But also when you look at BYU's ability to get those offensive rebounds that we mentioned earlier, Flory becomes really important in trying to keep Keita off the offensive glass. And then it'd be huge if Flory could give KU, 14, 15, 16 points in this one. For BYU, players to watch, AJ Debansa, 23.6 points per game, 6.7 rebounds per game, 3.6 assists per game, 1.8 stocks per game. He's shooting 53% from the floor, 32 from three after a bad game against Arizona, and then 76% on free throws. But one thing of note, and I think actually Sam Vecini of The Athletic wrote about this in a piece just like today or yesterday or something, where it was kind of talking about like there's been some bigger games this year that Debansa, the efficiency hasn't been there as much. Like Arizona, he goes 6 of 24. Against KenPom top 100 opponents, Debansa's 2-point percentage drops so for the full season, he's at 59% on twos. In just the top 100 games, he's at 47%. 3-point percentage goes from 32 to 29. That'll be interesting if that's something that Kansas can take advantage of. The question, though, is, Arizona is almost built to be able to slow down a player like Debansa. I don't think Kansas is built that same way personnel-wise, but we'll get more into that in a second. Richie Saunders is the other player to watch. 18.8 points per game, 5.5 rebounds per game, 2.1 assists per game, 2 steals per game. Very opportunistic defender. And he's shooting 50% from the floor, 39% from three, 82% from the free throw line on high volume from three. He had 22 points on 9 of 13 shooting against Kansas last year, so he'll be ready to go in this one. Let's get to our Kansas keys to the game. We'll get to the player matchup of the game, Hawks to soar, all that and more. This is Locked on Jayhawks. This episode is brought to you by Mazda, moving the game forward. For those who show there's more to the score than what's on the screen. I thought Bryson Tiller was really good for Kansas against Kansas State. He was steady, 8 points in the first half, 8 points in the second half. He was aggressive, but he had some touch on some of his shots around the rim too. Had over a handful of rebounds. He was really impressive. That might have been his best game in a Kansas uniform. And it just reminds you what it really takes to raise the bar. It's that extra work off the court, dialing in every detail, giving it that extra fire, that grit and never quit mentality. We put that same passion into every model with Mazda. Highlights make the reel. What it took to get there makes it count. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you. That is Mazda. Thanks again for joining us on Locked On Jayhawks, and you can check out the Everydayer Club for the ad-free version of Locked On Jayhawks, lockedonpodcast.com/everydayer. Okay, keys to the game for Kansas. Let's start with the offensive key for Kansas against BYU. Get to the free throw line. All three of BYU's losses this year have come in their bottom 4 games in opponent free throw attempt rate. So basically, the games that BYU has sent the other team to the line the most, that's represented 3 of their losses. And I think part of it is, I don't think BYU is the deepest team. Like, they've got those 3 players. They've got as good of a 3-headed monster as anybody in the country in terms of scorers, with Debansa, Rob Wright, and Richie Saunders. And they have other good players too. Like, Keita's a good player, but Keita's more of a, again, rebounder, defender, stuff like that. If you can get some of them in foul trouble, then maybe that comes into play a little bit. So that would obviously be helpful. And then the high-low game, I think, becomes very important for KU. Both Flory and Bryson Tiller need to score in this game. I think both of them need to, well, maybe it's not both need double figures, but maybe both combined need to score, 25 points for you on the inside. So right now, Kansas is in the 96th percentile for scoring efficiency on high-low game. And that has been BYU's 3rd worst defensive play type allowed. So on paper, this is an advantage for KU. Take advantage of it. Make it a big strength that you can have a calling card in this game. And if you can make the high-low game work, it just makes Darryn Peterson that much more dangerous, right? Now, the KU defense, keys to the game there. Defensive rebound is the big one. We mentioned that BYU is in the 97th percentile in second chance points per game. It makes sense because they're a good offensive rebounding team. They do it at a high rate. And then you think about them having some good shooters. What do we think about when you get an offensive rebound? A lot of times shooters get open because the court is condensed or players have leaked out in transition, and now you're leaving somebody wide open for a 3-ball off an offensive rebound. And if we're just looking at the top 100 games that BYU has played, they're in the 96th percentile for scoring efficiency on rebound and scramble plays. So just avoiding those situations altogether by grabbing the defensive rebound, going to be vital for KU. The other one is slowing down the drives of AJ Debansa without fouling too much. He's going to score sometimes. He's too good of a player to completely shut down. Can you slow him down? Can you make him more inefficient? He's going to get to the free throw line sometimes. He's too good of an athlete not to put you in a bad position when he's driving and get hit a few times. But can you make it so he doesn't shoot 15 free throws, right? Can you try to keep him to 6 or 8, right? Can you kind of limit the numbers there? And BYU as a team, mostly thanks to Debansa, they're in the 90th percentile for frequency of rim attacks. They're also in the 91st percentile for scoring efficiency on such plays. So they're a very good driving team. Rob Wright can drive a little bit and take advantage of that. But Debansa is the biggest threat to kind of do that because he is such a good athlete and he has these long, I think Bill Self said at the presser, like he takes 2 strides for other guys taking 3, which I think is a good example and understanding of how it's kind of working. And the big question here is, can Flory impact things without fouling? You have one of the best shot blockers in the country against a team who is led by a player who is a fiend at getting to the rim and getting to the free throw line. If he gets Flory in foul trouble, that's a huge problem for Kansas. If Flory can impact the game without fouling, that's a huge problem for BYU. So I think this becomes a very intriguing matchup at both ends. And then the last one would be the transition defense. I mean, Flory mentioned it ahead of time, so we'll bring it up right here as well. Our player matchup of the game is technically Debansa versus Darryn Peterson. Do we see both players go for 30 plus? Do we dare see? I mean, we've only seen one Kansas Jayhawk go for 40 plus in a game under Bill Self. Do we have a chance of seeing that here and seeing it from the opponent in the same game? Like, that would be pretty darn cool for people in attendance and just from an entertainment perspective. But we're going to actually make our player matchup, even though it kind of is that one. We're going to make it Debansa versus who the heck guards him for KU. I think there's a chance Debansa guards Peterson. Maybe there's a chance Peterson guards Debansa. I think it's less likely Peterson guards Debansa than it is Debansa guarding Peterson. But we'll kind of wait and see on that. There's a chance neither guards each other. But how does KU defend Debansa? Because if KU throws Bryson Tiller on him, that gives you good size. Tiller's got like a 7'3" wingspan. He's mobile for a big, but he's still a big man. Debansa is going to try to out-athlete him, and that could be a problem. Do you throw Trey White on him, who would be a little more suited as a wing to defend him? Debansa is still going to be more athletic just because he's, 100th percentile athlete in college basketball, but it wouldn't be as big of a speed advantage. but then he has more of a height advantage on White than he would with Tiller. So I don't know what your answer would be there. Do you throw Flory Bidunga on him at times? Do you throw, again, Darryn Peterson on him at times? Do you just throw different guys? Do like at certain times, do you throw Council on him or a Marco and just be like, hey, if you're just going to shoot in the post, we'll let you a few possessions and we're just going to try to get a steal off you? I don't think you can do that because Debansa is so good at those turnarounds in the lane, and he's so good from kind of that mid-range area. So that makes it a little more difficult of what you do. And this is the problem with, so Kansas is not a wing-heavy team. Like, is this game we see 5 minutes for Samis Calderon just to, hey, Calderon, you're a 6'8" wing with a 7'2" wingspan. Just try to match the athleticism of Dybantsa. Just stay in front of him. If you get 4 fouls, you get 4 fouls in 5 minutes. You know, is that something you do? I don't really know what the answer is for KU, but on the flip side, if Debansa is guarding Trey White instead of Darryn Peterson, Trey White has been awesome at getting fouls himself. Could Trey White get Debansa into foul trouble? Because that would be the easiest answer for KU. How do you guard AJ Debansa? You get him in foul trouble and put him on the bench, right? Our Hawks the sore here on the season. BYU has given up the most shots compared to other teams nationally at the rim, mid-range twos, and above the break. And if we just look at Big 12 only play, it's been more so just at the rim and mid-range twos. Darryn Peterson leads Kansas in mid-range attempts. Per game, not total. But he's shooting them really well. 47% on the mid-range is very good. He's also shooting 68% at the rim, which is up to 69% in conference play and up to 75% over the last 5 games. He's also knocking down 39% of his above the break threes on over 6 attempts per game. So he's going to be highly motivated. Potential, there's been more movement of people moving Debansa ahead of Peterson on their mock drafts because of some of the injury stuff. He can be very highly motivated, right? Add to it that BYU is in the 61st percentile in top 100 games in defending dribble jumpers, which that's still above average, but that's actually their second worst defensive play style. All of those make me think as long as he's healthy enough, Darryn Peterson can get 30-plus points here. Now, the other one of note that I'm not going to pick, but just one I wanted to bring up real quickly, BYU is in the 27th percentile for points allowed per play on pick and pops. That is their worst defensive play. But Kansas doesn't pick and pop. Flory's not a pick and pop big. Bryson Tiller technically could be a pick and pop big because of his ability to, he can go off the dribble, he can hit a mid-range, he can hit a three. But Kansas is in the 3rd percentile nationally in pick and pop efficiency. So again, it's not something they normally do. Do you dust off the pick and pop plays from the attic and use a few of them in this game? Or maybe some of it's on short roll like Flory or Tiller. I don't know. That'll be kind of interesting. But yeah, Peterson is our Hawk to soar. All right, that'll do it for this episode of Locked on Jayhawks. You can find our show anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page where you can like and subscribe to the show. We will have another episode before game time. Bryce Simon, who does excellent draft coverage work with Sam Vecini's, going to weigh in on the AJ Debansa, Darryn Peterson matchup. So that one will come out for you, I don't know, Friday night, Saturday morning. Haven't totally decided there. So see you next time for another edition of LOJ.